It's so early. I'm your host, Will Schoellkopf, author of the Bitcoin Dog, following the ascent to the Bitcoin C++ source code, and contributor to Bitcoin Magazine. You can use my promo code BitcoinDog to save 10% off on your tickets to the Bitcoin 2023 conference. And if you're a fan of the show, please like, comment, and subscribe. My guest today is DjSaToShi. DJ, how you doing?
Hey, thank God I'm doing very well. How are you?
Good, good. Please introduce yourself for those who haven't gotten a chance to meet you.
Yeah, absolutely. Sure. So I go by DJ. DJ Satoshi18 is my Twitter handle. And I've been hosting some interesting Twitter spaces lately. And I call the show Bitcoin is Freedom because Bitcoin is freedom money. And it's taught me financial literacy and helped me find financial freedom. So, really love sharing the message with others and learning about Bitcoin with others on Twitter Spaces.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think I'm pretty sure that's how I met you in the first place, was through one of your Twitter spaces. I think the way Twitter works is to join a space in the first place, you have to either follow someone in the space or one of your followers has to be in the space. So definitely that part of the Twitter algorithm is at least working to get me to connect with you and join one of your spaces. In particular, I noticed it seems like you have more than one Twitter space. I guess Bitcoin is Freedom. Is that your main Twitter space? I have a feeling like you do three different ones.
Yeah, so at first, I mean, I didn't even plan to like do these Twitter Spaces. I just randomly stumbled on Twitter because I was following Anthony Pompliano, and he was, starting his Best Business show on YouTube, and I was really like, paying attention to Anthony Pompliano because he was doing a lot of Bitcoin interviews when I started learning about Bitcoin. And so I was following him, and then he started the Best Business show. And when he started that, they were doing like some giveaways. Like they were like, if you tweet us out, we'll give you like $100 in Bitcoin or something like that. So
Did you
I
win?
joined Twitter. No, I never won. I never won anything. But what had happened was they were just like, if you like tweet out the show, we'll enter you into to win and stuff like that. And so I figured, I never really was on social media. It's not really my type of thing. I never really was into like sharing pictures of my food and, uh, you know, giving daily updates of myself and my life. So I kind of just stayed off social media for a long time and then decided to just join Twitter for that reason. And then started finding that there were a lot of Bitcoiners on Twitter. And I didn't know that. And so, as I kind of was learning about Bitcoin, I would, hear a lot of podcasts and interviews and start realizing that a lot of these really smart people were on Twitter. So I was like, all right, well, I guess I can just make an account and I can just start following these people and learning from them there too. And then I just stumbled one day into a Bitcoin Twitter space, and it was I think actually the Bitcoin Council of Autism, and it was an interesting space. A lot of interesting Bitcoiners there, and some really educated and smart guys there. And it was interesting to stumble upon them because the Bitcoin Council of Autism, they crack jokes, and they definitely have a good time and have fun there. And so I was kind of like surprised that there were just so many Bitcoiners hanging out and just kind of having a good time. And I was like, all right, well, this is cool. I guess I'll hang out here on Twitter. And, I just started following people and started realizing that like there's actually a big Bitcoin community there. And I was at the point where I had kind of run out of family and friends to keep talking about Bitcoin with because a lot of my family and friends basically told me to stop it, at that point where, like I got maybe a few people interested, but most people just didn't want to hear anything about it. They were like, it's a scam or super skeptical without even willing to, read anything up on it or listen to any of the podcasts or any of the interviews that I would send them that I would be learning from. And so it was nice to finally, meet another group of people that actually understood Bitcoin. So I was like, all right, well, this is cool. Maybe I should start hosting spaces. And so I, at first, I was kind of just doing it randomly. Like whenever I wouldn't see a Bitcoin Twitter space pop up, I would just create my own and start hosting. And people seem to come in and seem to have really great conversations and learn from them and share a lot of good knowledge there. So I decided to host 3 times a week. So I do Mondays, Thursdays, and Saturday nights. So Monday and Thursday, I do 8 to 11 Eastern Standard Time. And then Saturday nights, I usually do like 10 to 12. And I try to make like the Saturday night one kind of like more of a fun time where we can just like hang out and chill and um, just like play music. We welcome singers like for karaoke night. So, just kind of try to relax and have a good time. And we're always welcoming to any newcomers. That's kind of the other big point of why I've been hosting these spaces is because I really want to. I found that like there's a lot of Twitter spaces where a lot of people are like really just like talking about a lot of the world problems, because Twitter is global. And I found that there is a lot of different people from a lot of different countries, and they're hosting spaces, and they're usually talking about problems that affect them daily. And sometimes even like conspiracy theories, different stuff, interesting stuff, but whatever. And every time I would go into these spaces, all I would hear is like problems, and I wouldn't ever really hear solutions. It's like some people would, some people would offer solutions, but they would be very like, hey, we got to change this politician, we got to change this law, we got to change this law, we got to do this, we got to regulate this more, regulate that more, and I'm just like, oh God, like how do these guys not even have they not even heard of Bitcoin? And I just would start and go into these random spaces and try to get up there and start talking to them about Bitcoin and like ask them, hey, what is money? Like, and like, oftentimes I would get kicked out because they were like, oh, we don't want to hear about that. That's a scam, or like, oh, we don't want to talk about crypto. I'm like, no, 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 I'm not here to talk about crypto. I'm here to talk about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is not crypto. And they like it's the first cryptocurrency maybe, but it's not like all these other cryptos. It's not an altcoin. It's not like a get rich quick scheme. It's something completely different. Like, can we talk about it? And they just wouldn't have it usually. So depending though, there's some spaces that are really like freedom oriented, right? And they really love freedom. And that's like the common general theme that I find amongst most people, like no matter their ideology, everybody wants freedom. Everybody wants the freedom of choice and the freedom of will to exist because that's what we're naturally born with. That's how we're supposed to live, is how we want to, how everybody wants to within their own community, within their own lifestyle. We should all be able to choose how we live. But unfortunately, that's not what's happening right now. And I think that's why all of these worldly problems exist. And it really affects every individual around the world in their own personal way. And I think people are really kind of really sick of it now. Because I know I was when I started learning about Bitcoin. I mean, the only reason I even stumbled into Bitcoin was because, March 2020 came and I got furloughed and I didn't even know what furlough meant. I was working a retail sales job, and we weren't allowed to open our business and weren't allowed to open the store. And it was just like, all right, well, what am I going to do now? Like I have no job, I can't support myself anymore. Like what the hell am I supposed to do? So I started learning. Like I'm like, I was already sick of it. Like we were coming home and we were sick and tired of like working like long hours. We would just come home and just sit in front of the TV, have a bite to eat for dinner, and then repeat, rinse and repeat. And it's like, it's the rat race, like you kind of lose hope. You kind of like think you're never going to get out of this. It's like, how are you supposed to get ahead? How are you supposed to, buy a property, start a family? Like, it's like the never ending rat race, like, so we just, I started learning about what is money. I started asking myself, like, why is it that I've been told that I have to like earn a living and like all this by like working for money? Like, because my wife and I, we were always like really interested in just like having our own place and like working our own land to like grow our own food and to, you know, do all that kind of fun stuff that we thought would be awesome. And we just never really got a chance to because it's like so hard to get a property, so hard to kind of get ahead in the economy. And it's like, why is that? So I started learning about what is money, started learning about what is gold once I went down that rabbit hole, because I was like, oh, like I didn't even know that, like, that, like, what happened in 1971. I didn't even really understand all that. Like, nobody ever taught me basic economics. And it's interesting because my mother, she actually had a degree in economics. And it's like, you would have thought that I would have learned all this, but, it just never happened. And so, like, schooling didn't teach that. And so went down that rabbit hole, understood, gold a little better, and started thinking about gold. And once I started looking into that, it's like most of the gold that you're buying is paper gold. And, if you don't actually custody that gold, how are you going to get it if things happen? Like, who's going to custody that for you? And even if they do custody it for you, good luck getting your hands on it when the time comes that you want it. So I started going further down that rabbit hole, and then I found Bitcoin. I'm like, what's this Bitcoin thing? I remember hearing about it back in, like, college days, when my friends were like buying, you know, different things online that they probably shouldn't have been buying. And, well, depending on who you ask, right? But, so they were kind of delving into it, I guess. And I heard about it from them, but I ignored it because I didn't want to like deal with like dark web money or whatever they were calling it. And so I just stayed away from it like an idiot, instead of actually like understanding how it actually works, because it sounded interesting, because I was into like computer science and stuff then. And like, I should have been a little bit more intrigued and a little bit more open-minded, I think, to like at least be willing to look at the like technology and understand how it worked. But I was kind of like, just, I guess, lazy and stupid. So I ignored it then. And then 2017 came around, and I think it was like Thanksgiving dinner, and my mother-in-law to be at that time, because we weren't married yet, my wife and I at that time. So she'd mentioned, oh, like blockchain technology is going to be the future. You should really look into it. And I was like, what's that? I don't know anything about
Wait, hold on. I
blockchain.
have to interrupt for a second. You're
Yeah.
saying your wife came to you about blockchain technology?
No, no. So my
Right,
my wife to be at that time, because we weren't married yet, we were
right,
still
right.
dating.
Yeah.
So we were at Thanksgiving dinner at my mother-in-law to be's house, so for Thanksgiving, and she was talking about how like this whole blockchain thing is
Okay.
booming in 2017, and I hadn't heard about it because I wasn't paying attention to the markets. I never really got into like investing, never really had a job that was going to offer me like a 401k or any of that to match. So I never really got into like this whole investing thing. And even before then, I never really trusted the stock market. It kind of sounded iffy to me. And whenever I did a little bit of research into it, I was like, I don't really want to like gamble. It felt like gambling to me. It's like, it's like just a liability. It's just like a note on it's just a stock of a company that could go under. Like, I just never really like felt comfortable investing
Yeah, it's
into
still
stocks.
amazing to me to think that at the Thanksgiving dinner in 2017, it wasn't you, DJ Satoshi, telling your family about Bitcoin. It was actually your mother-in-law telling you about blockchain. Like
I know.
that was
I
the
know.
Thanksgiving dinner back
I
then,
know.
2017, right when Bitcoin was about to hit $19,000 in USD terms.
Exactly. And I was an idiot and I ignored it again. I tried to understand blockchain in 2017 after she talked about it. Like, I did a tiny, tiny little bit of research into it, but I never did research on Bitcoin. I just was looking up blockchain, and for some reason I was just like getting all these different headlines, and like I think I might have seen some headline of like, oh, it's a big bubble, like Bitcoin's a big bubble, crypto's a big bubble. I might have seen that and ignored it, but I was also just, I guess, too complacent at that time. And I guess maybe it was just too busy with my day to day. Again, this is just what happens, And so I ignored it for another few years. And then until March 2020, when I got furloughed and actually started going down the rabbit hole and asking myself, like, wait a second, what is money? Like, what is it that I'm really working for so hard and really like, struggling to get ahead because of? Like, and basically just stuck in this monotonous like rat race, like that's when I really started looking into Bitcoin and started looking into, because of going down the rabbit hole, I fell into like also looking into all these other cryptos, and kind of fell down the rabbit hole of like listening to a lot of different like YouTubers and a lot of different social media influencers, I guess is what they're calling them, so I went down the Bitcoin rabbit hole, but I also went down the crypto rabbit hole. And started also researching like, all the different altcoins and, doing a lot of research into those. And so, everyone was like, oh, you got to diversify. So, it took me months before I felt comfortable actually like putting $1 in even, so finally when I did, I started the wrong way, I think, because I did the whole diversification thing, and I wasn't like thinking of it as like I'm going to become a trader, even though like that's kind of the whole thing that they teach is like they're like, oh yeah, you can trade and you can make so much money. It's like this
It's
whole get
interesting to
rich quick
me.
scheme.
It's interesting to me because um, hearing you talk about the stock market and being afraid of the stock market being a scam or feeling scammy, and it's the whole concept of diversification is famous from within the stock market. So again, just thinking about how for all of your effort to avoid the stock market, um, when you finally actually dive in, it's into the cryptocurrency market, and it's in that market you choose to diversify as opposed to the stock
Exactly.
market.
Exactly. And that's because that's when I started learning about like investing and like long-term investing and value investing, and all these, YouTubers would be shilling this project is valuable, it's going to change the world. Like look at VeChain, it's going to fix the supply chain issues, or look at, Cardano is going to fix this, or look at, whatever other thing, look at Ethereum, it's going to be the world computer. It's like all these things, all these different narratives that are just being thrown around. And it's like this whole hype and this whole marketing, like it's exactly the same thing that, like you would find in, stocks, but a little bit different, I think, because, you know, again, you're coming at it so fresh and so new, you're a freshie, and, like you're watching your savings melt away and that you worked so hard for 20 years. And, you're watching your ability to finally buy your first property completely go get destroyed because, housing prices just skyrocketed another 20 to 30%. So you're just like, all right, well, I guess this is my only opportunity, So I was still inexperienced at that time, but I started to at least, start dabbling and started to at least start dollar cost averaging in. It wasn't unfortunately only into Bitcoin. It was unfortunately into a lot of other, uh, you know, altcoins, if you want to be nice about it, or, what I term as, the S word coins now, but the poop coins. And, so I kind of went down that path at first. But the more I started learning, and I kept learning, like literally I was doing 40 to 60 hours a week just in learning about Bitcoin and about other cryptos. But I really just kept going down the rabbit hole, and just didn't want to stop. Like it just was so interesting to me, like the technology, like the humanitarian side is like what I'm really getting into now, like especially with everything going on now, like how it's going to really be able to help so many like issues around the world for so many people. Like that's really like even another big reason of why I started doing the Bitcoin Twitter spaces, because like all these spaces, the commonality, like I said, is everyone's just looking for freedom. Everyone's just looking how to get out of this like rat race. And I really do believe that if we can fix the money, we can really fix the world. So like, like all these mottos that Bitcoiners hold so true, like so close to the heart. And it really is so true once you really understand Bitcoin and how it works, and the economics behind it and the philosophy behind it and the humanitarian side behind it. Like it really is true, you know? Yeah. And it's just like amazing. And so like I couldn't like keep my voice quiet anymore, because I was like, all right, well, like I just want to, like I've tried to talk to my family about it. I tried to talk to all my friends about it. Literally my mother-in-law right now, she doesn't even let me talk to her about Bitcoin. Like it's like a
One who
hard rule
introduced you
now.
to blockchain in the first place now doesn't
Yeah.
want you to talk to her about Bitcoin.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, because her approach is, oh, well, I invest, my portfolio is diversified, and I'm investing into like I think she says like an ETF called Block, like BLOK, I think. And I was just like, listen, like that's not Bitcoin. Like that's completely different. Like so I try to talk to her. I've sent her like all the best, interviews, all the best podcasts. She just doesn't want to have anything to do with it. I don't even know if she's watched them, like she lives in another state from us. So, we don't really get as much time together. And even when we do, she just doesn't want to listen. And so I just try to be polite now and just, I guess, like leave her be, and same with some of my friends and like some of my family that just they don't want to hear about it. They just don't want to even, it's not even that they don't want to hear about it that bothers me. What bothers me is that they don't want to even try to do a little bit of due diligence on it. But I totally get it because that's exactly how I was back in like 2011, 2012, 2013, and also back in 2017. So can you blame them? I mean, so it's really hard. And so like because the education is so important, because it's so important for people to go down the rabbit hole and really ask themselves, like the most important question in my opinion is like, what is money? What is value? So when you really dive deep into those concepts and really understand that, like you can get why Bitcoin solves all the problems that we're having right now. And so because of that, like that's what's motivating me personally to really try everything I can to just help people learn about Bitcoin, and help people learn about, financial literacy. And, because I've always been interested in like self-help and like self-growth and like, even before Bitcoin, I was always like listening to different podcasts and different people and reading different books about like how do you grow, how do you become better. And it was just never from like I was looking for financial freedom, but it was always from like how I'm still really into like business entrepreneurship and like creating businesses, how to run businesses. And so, that's what I was always looking for is financial freedom because I really don't like the idea of how you have to like today most people, are trading their time for money. And like that just doesn't add up for me because that lifestyle you completely like can't live freely. Like you're working till you're 65 only so that you can then have a few good years maybe if you're lucky. And then you don't even know if like your retirement's going to be enough, especially now. Your retirement's not going to be enough. There's people that are retiring and then having to go back to work because they can't make ends meet. So that's really what's driving me now is like just really trying to get the word out about Bitcoin as much as I can to anyone that's willing to listen and anyone that's interested in learning. And that's kind of what I'm working on now. That's my passion now.
Well, definitely, I sympathize with you. I think Phil put out a Twitter poll recently asking his followers, who are the people you think are the hardest to orange pill? Is it family? Is it friends? Is it coworkers? Is it people over Twitter? And I think sorry, it was about who's the easiest to orange pill. And then so the one with the lowest score he found, I think, was family members, that it actually is the most difficult when it's family members. And I think my response to Phil was basically just that it's because they know you well, so it might be tough for them to consider you an expert on the topic. And then that's got to be the most frustrating thing for some of us Bitcoiners. We live by that principle: don't trust, verify. And to your credit, you're saying I'm not asking you to trust me necessarily. I'm just asking it if to please honor me and listen to this podcast or listen to this interview. This made me think of you.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I think, like, personally, for me, the reason I share all this information with others is because, like, in the beginning, I was like running around screaming Bitcoin everywhere to everyone, right? And super
Didn't
excited
work.
even before I really fully understood it. But I could just sense it. And the little bit that I did understand, I could see that it made sense because it's just math. And I could at least add that up. Like I could see that it's verifiably scarce. I could see that the code isn't going to just change like willy-nilly because some central bankers and the Fed decide to. I could see that it's not centralized. I could see that it's actually decentralized. I can see how many nodes are running and how the mining is working and like all this information, like it's open source. It's so there's so much that's different that just is much easier to grasp once you can really just open your mind to it and really just be willing to learn about it. And so it's interesting how you said that because like you're right, like family isn't really sometimes willing to listen to other family members because there's other relationship barriers that sometimes exist between family members. Like my mother-in-law, like she feels like she's older and wiser, and so I'm just getting into a Ponzi scheme. And whereas someone who is willing to listen to you just off the street. Like I've had conversations with people off the street, and you talk to them about inflation, and then you try to explain to them how, when more money is created into the system, that debases your value. And they're like, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense. I never thought of that. It's like, oh, great. Okay, yeah, I should look into this. That's interesting. It's like that simple, but really, like where I was going with this before I keep getting distracted, sorry. But where I was going with this is when we share this information with our loved ones, with our family, with our friends, and when you share any information with anybody, really, it's out of love, it's out of respect for that person. So
You're not
you're
trying to keep
totally
it
right.
secret so that you can just get rich and have nobody know.
Exactly, right? Yeah. But see, that's the other interesting thing too. Like I heard Max Kaiser say something interesting on an interview with Samson Mao and somebody else. Uh, Somebody else was interviewing them, and Max Kaiser said, "What Bitcoin does is it turns greed into altruism." And I really find that interesting because I think he's right. Like to your point, it doesn't make sense to be greedy, because you realize that it doesn't make sense because you want more people to benefit. You want more people on the network. You want more people to also have an equal chance to enrich themselves and to be able to trade and to have fair value being traded amongst each other. And so it's beneficial for everyone. It's not just about yourself. It's about everyone. So it's really interesting.
Yeah, I think also to that point, in Satoshi Nakamoto's design of Bitcoin, having the economic incentives for the Bitcoin miners to be greedy and try to monetize energy as much as possible makes it the network only more secure by increasing the hash power and hash rate of the network, making blocks more difficult to mine, more greedy to monetize energy, all forms of energy, including natural energy like wind or solar that is far away from cities, but it's an ability to capture that and then strengthen Bitcoin. Definitely. I do want to ask, um, you are part of the Satoshi Journal team, is that right? I was curious if your role with Satoshi's Journal is the spaces or if it's something more as well.
Yeah, so it's a little bit more as well. Yeah, I mean, I'm a part of the team. We have meetings at least once a week. I try to help them with strategy, and try to help them with planning and building the company. So what we're trying to do is it's basically a place for Bitcoin education and news. And it's supposed to be, by the plebs for the plebs. So the whole point of it is that, we're just regular plebs. There's this whole term. I actually didn't really ever hear about this term plebs until I found Bitcoin Twitter. So it's interesting because I just always thought of myself, I'm just a normal working person, but I guess we're plebes, we're plebeians, plebs, whatever you want to call it. But that's fine. But the point is just that what we try to do is we try to share people's stories about how they learned about Bitcoin and share that with the world, and then try to translate all of that, all of those articles, all of those stories into as many languages as possible. Because when I joined Bitcoin Twitter, that's how I met Jeremy Garcia and Oluwasegun Kosamani, which are both the co-founders. And I met them through Bitcoin Twitter Spaces, and we hit it off. And so, you know, Jeremy reached out to me, and he saw that I was doing the Twitter Spaces, and he said that he would like me to join them and to help them build the Satoshi's Journal team. And so I agreed, and we've just kind of been building it ever since. I think we started in, like, was it May or April? I forget, but it's still pretty fresh. And so we're still building it, but every time we have a meeting, we get another idea, and we're building the team out. There's already, I think, more than 6 actual full-time employees in Nigeria, because that's where the team is based out of. Because Olu lives in Nigeria, and he was actually already helping educate his locals there. He's been educating children, I think, from like ages like 5 to 10 or something like that. I don't know the details. I don't remember at least, but I know he's been educating children locally. He's also got a Bitcoin exchange that he started, so he's an owner of that. And so he's been in the Bitcoin industry for a while, and I you know I just really like them. They're good people and they're trying to do good things. So trying to help them as much as I can. And it's I think we're going to do great things because, for example, one project that we're really working on now is the Bitcoin village in Nigeria. Olu has an acre of land that he's donating to Fix the Money, Fix the World, which is like the nonprofit arm of Satoshi's journal. And we're going to try to build a little village that will have like a Bitcoin only circular economy and help educate people locally there about Bitcoin and show them how Bitcoin can help their local people there. So it's really important work, and it's really interesting because like a lot of these countries, like they have issues with even just running water. They have issues with food, and it's tough. And like it's wild that like literally you can like feed a person in Nigeria for like maybe 50 cents a day, for example. um, Whereas here, just to feed a person in the US, you're probably looking at like 40 bucks a day or something like that. So it's wild, like the difference. But also it's wild when you think about how all these countries, the reason they're hyperinflating, their currencies are hyperinflating, is because they're pegged to the US dollar. And because the economies have such a peg to the US hegemony, so it really affects them even more. Their inflation actually skyrockets faster and they feel it faster before we do. And it's wild to think about that we're struggling in America right now, um, while they're struggling even more. I mean, just this week, so many stories have broken out, in Sri Lanka and um, even in Japan, there was an assassination. I mean, there's so much happening in the world today, and it's just wild. And the unrest, I mean, literally, like you can just name almost any country. I mean, even Lebanon, even like I could just go on forever. And just in the sake of time, I'm not gonna. You can literally name so many countries that are just like falling apart. I mean, even in Canada, just north of us, they had an issue where their government just froze bank accounts because people donated even as little as $1 to a cause that they believe in, of like peaceful protesters that were protesting against the right to not be forced to not be forced to vaccinate, not be forced to put something into their body that they didn't feel comfortable doing. Like I think that's a human right to not be forced to do something to your body that you don't want to. You know, it's nothing political. It's just if you don't want to get vaccinated, you shouldn't have to. It's that simple. But apparently it's not that simple, and so people's bank accounts got frozen, and the only money that actually was able to be transacted with was Bitcoin that was in people's self custody. Bitcoin that was on exchanges was frozen and blacklisted out, so they couldn't actually withdraw that Bitcoin from exchanges. But Bitcoin that went directly from the Bitcoin addresses of donors to the Bitcoin address that was in self custody got distributed by the person who held that Bitcoin and distributed it to the truckers. And then truckers were able to survive because they had Bitcoin in self custody. So literally that saved them and that allowed them to get through the truckers' freedom convoy in Canada. Had it not been for Bitcoin, they would have been screwed.
There it is,
So like,
DJ. Bitcoin,
you know,
fix the money, fix the world. Bitcoin is freedom. We're short on time, so I'll skip the last word and just ask you the last question. What would you say to anyone who thinks it's actually too late to get started in Bitcoin?
yeah, I mean, I had the same problem in the beginning. I was worried I was too late. I mean, I was looking at the price going from 10K to 20K to 30K to 40K to 50K to 60K, and that whole time I was just able to, dollar cost average anything that I could afford. And, I think that's really the best way is just start getting off of zero, because the sooner you get off zero and the more you learn, the faster you learn, the better you're going to be better off. Because for example, there's for a fact that there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoin. And you also know that there's roughly 8 billion people on Earth. And so if you divide 21 million by 8 billion, then you're going to know that just 262,500 Satoshis is kind of like your share of the Bitcoin network in terms of like if you divide that by 8 billion people. So you can buy that for roughly like $60 right now, or even $50, and it's like, even if you don't really yet understand it and you're still skeptical about it, just get off of zero and just buy yourself like $50, $60, like, people spend that on like beers and sometimes even on a movie. Like it's like $25 for a ticket nowadays, $30 for a ticket. Like it's not going to hurt you. You can afford to save 50, $60, and it's going to potentially save you. Just think of it as like just think of it as insurance, because it's literally the only money that you can self custody, that no bank, no government, nobody can tell you that you can't spend it. Nobody can freeze it on you, so it's literally freedom money.
There you
So you're not
go.
too late, like there's we only have what, like 1 to 2% adoption right now globally, I think. There's only like roughly 200 million people that have adopted so far, and it's literally being
So
adopted faster
only
than the speed of
1%,
the internet.
only 1 to 2% adoption. So then is it early? Is it early, DJ?
Oh, it's beyond early, and it
Beyond
really just
early.
takes so much learning to get to that point of just losing that greed and thinking that you missed out on something, and just understanding that, like, listen, it's better you get in now than you just keep not getting in and not having real money, real hard sound money.
All right, DJ. Well, I want to respect your time because I know you got to go. But you heard it here on the podcast. DjSaToShi18 says it's beyond early. Thank you for coming on, DJ.
Yeah, no, absolutely, I appreciate it, and thank you so much for having me, and I hope you guys join us on the Bitcoin Twitter Spaces. And if there's anything I can do to help you guys on your journey learning about Bitcoin, then please feel free to reach out.
Sounds good. See you.